They said he wasn't ready, that Royval would crush him, that a 22-year-old kid from Houston didn't belong in that cage. But what if I told you that fight wasn't the one that made Joshua Van? What if the real battle, the one that carved him, began long before the octagon, before contracts, before cameras? Let me take you somewhere the spotlight never shines. Hakka, Myanmar. This is where Joshua Van's story begins. Third of 5 siblings, born into a life shaped by conflict, uncertainty, survival. He grew up hearing the sound of war and knowing that each day could bring danger. He learned early that home was temporary and security was rare. His childhood wasn't carefree, it was cautious. Every footstep measured, every sound analyzed. At age 10, his family fled to Malaysia. No home, no familiarity, no promises, just the heavy loss of leaving everything behind. His new school felt foreign. He didn't understand a word. He became a young man overnight, driven by necessity and responsibility. But if you think that was the toughest moment in his life, you're absolutely wrong. By 12, Joshua stepped onto American soil in Houston, Texas, a sprawling metropolis of possibilities and paradoxes. English everywhere, but he was understanding almost none of it. Each hallway at school was a maze. Each word felt like a wall. While other kids biked or played video games, he helped his siblings adjust, translated for his mother at grocery stores, and began building a new identity from scratch. He didn't have a skateboard, didn't know what TikTok was. He carried grocery bags, ambition, and a silent question. Am I here by accident or purpose? Then it happened. At the age of 18, his MMA journey began in 2020. It looked rough, maybe dangerous, maybe life-changing. He showed up at the gym and probably didn't expect that day to change his life forever. He didn't have the fanciest gloves, but what he had was raw instinct. Most kids test the waters, but Joshua dove in head first. He had a purpose that demanded everything he had. Van trained before school, after homework, and late into the night. He didn't just come to be a fighter, he came to be found. In the beginning, he fought in shanty gyms with a few fans under flickering bulbs, but Joshua had been through worse, so he didn't quit. He simply aimed higher. Then one day, his phone rang. The call was about a last-minute slot in a local card. There was no hype and no cameras. He just stepped in barefoot and dismantled the favorite in under 2 minutes. Maybe that was the moment that ignited everything. In 2021, Joshua Van signs with Fury Fighting Championship. He fights 6 times, 6 wins. Then he takes his first loss, which stings, but it builds him. Each defeat is education, and each victory is validation. At the end of 2022, Joshua finally steps into the cage as the main event, with the flyweight title on the line. In the second round, he locks in a flawless submission, securing the belt. As his hand is raised, he holds the championship belt with tears cutting through sweat on his cheeks. And at that point, he realizes he made it. He's scheduled for Dana White's Contender Series. Then the UFC calls. That's when everything changes. In June 2023, it all begins. Joshua Van makes his UFC debut against Jalgaz Zhumagulov. The odds are against him, but he pulls off a split decision win. He proves that he belongs, just like he always believed. 5 months later, after intense training, he returns at UFC 295 to face Kevin Borjas. This time it's a dominant performance and he wins by unanimous decision. At the start of 2024, Joshua flies to Las Vegas and steps in on short notice to replace Dennis Bondar. His opponent is Felipe Bunes, and in the second round, Joshua finishes the fight with a TKO. But if you think everything was easy after that, you don't know his story. 3 months after his fight with Felipe Bunes, Van is booked against Lucas Rocha, but Rocha pulls out and there is no replacement whatsoever. On the 1st of June, he is set to face a Chinese MMA fighter in Newark, New Jersey, but the opponent withdraws last minute. 2 weeks later, Joshua is rebooked to face Tatsuro Taira, but once again, the fight gets canceled. He stays in the gym, training hard, waiting for his next shot in the octagon. Then finally, he gets some good news. He's matched up against Tagir Ulanbekov, but just as things start looking up, the unexpected happens. Tagir is 3.5 pounds over the flyweight limit, so the fight is called off. After all his struggles and canceled octagon battles, Joshua finally gets to fight in July 2024. But it doesn't play out like he expected. His opponent, Charles Johnson, successfully knocks him out in the 3rd round, handing Joshua his first UFC loss. While most fighters would melt in this situation, he simply returns to the gym the next day. At UFC 306, Joshua steps in once again, this time replacing Borjas. He wins against Edgar Chairez by unanimous decision, and after dealing with his first loss, you can imagine how badly he needed that victory. Then after 3 months of extreme training, Joshua Joshua flies to Las Vegas and battles Cody Durden. He defeats the American mixed martial artist by unanimous decision, but he had no idea about the next challenge waiting just around the corner. For 6 months, he doesn't step in the octagon. Of course, he still keeps training, and he prepares for his next big challenge, Bruno da Silva. But then he receives bad news. Silva pulls out, so now Van takes on a new opponent and still gets the win. But Silva doesn't get to just escape. He ends up facing Van a bit later. However, he probably wished he never did, because Joshua knocks him out in the 3rd round. Then comes June of 2025, UFC 317. Van accepts a fight on 3 weeks' notice against Brandon Royval, a veteran fighter known for his relentless pace and unpredictable style. In the UFC, he's earned Fight of the Night honors multiple times, so we can say that Las Vegas puts him as a heavy favorite, and everybody wants Royval to win. So we have the #1 contender versus the rising prospect who jumped in on short notice. But here's what makes this fight even more incredible. Just 3 weeks before the fight, Joshua broke his big toe. While most fighters would pull out and use it as an excuse, Joshua doesn't. He refuses to tell anyone and doesn't complain. He just wraps it up and shows up to training like nothing happened. And when the night of the fight comes, he isn't fighting like a man with a broken toe. He's fighting like a man possessed. 5 years. That's how long he'd been training for this moment since starting his MMA journey in 2020. 5 years of rapid improvement and becoming something that nobody expected. Inside the cage, Royval storms the center like a hurricane. Elbows spark, knees are fired, but Joshua doesn't flinch. He just adapts to Royval's style and collects every strike as data. Round 2 opens quiet, then boom, we see crisp jabs. After a brutal body shot that cracks the tone, Royval slows down. Meanwhile, Van keeps the pressure and the precision. In the 3rd round, Van lets loose and explodes with power. He lands 419 significant strikes, setting a UFC record for any 3-round fight at flyweight. It's Fight of the Night, and there's no need to explain why. Judges nod unanimous, and Joshua Van wins with authority. Even before Bruce Buffer could announce the decision, Joshua is already celebrating. He beats his chest and raises his hands with confidence. He knows he won. While Royval stands there looking defeated and disappointed, Joshua is already in victory mode, and the announcement was just for the sake of it. When Joe Rogan grabs the microphone for the post-fight interview, the energy is electric. Joe, a man who's seen thousands of fights, looks genuinely amazed. He tells the crowd that what he had just seen might have been the fight of the year. But Joshua isn't done. He takes the microphone from Joe and asks the crowd directly if that was the fight of the night. And the moment he does that, the arena erupts with thousands of voices screaming. This wasn't just a win, it was a coronation. A 23-year-old who'd been training for only 5 years had just dismantled the #1 contender on 3 weeks' notice with a broken toe. But that's not all. Post-fight, Joshua thanks God on live broadcast, and Joe Rogan is too stunned to speak. After that life-changing victory, Joshua doesn't retreat. He sits down in the crowd to watch the rest of the card live. He's especially interested in the title clash. The reigning flyweight champion, Alexander Pantoja, defending against Kai Kara-France. The fight is technical. It looks like a chess match with meat on the board. Pantoja is known for being a finishing machine and a relentless wrestler. Kai brings speed and heart, but Pantoja breaks him. So the fight ends in submission during the 3rd round. The crowd roars and Joshua Van watches the octagon. The moment the referee raises Pantoja's hand in victory, Joshua rises from his seat. He threads through fans and media toward the octagon. He steps through the cage door onto the canvas he fought on minutes earlier, and that's where his face-off with Pantoja goes down. They stand nose to nose, a refugee turned flyweight contender and a living champion whose talent and discipline built an empire. With cameras flashing, the tension is electric. This isn't just hype, it feels like destiny. Now comes Joshua's next mountain. Alexandre the Cannibal Pantoja, the reigning UFC flyweight champion. Born in Brazil, he learned jiu-jitsu in favelas as a teenager. Pantoja turned pro at 17, fought through local circuits, and even drove Uber Eats in Florida to support his training. At UFC 290, he claimed gold and has defended the belt 4 times since. He's never been stopped through 35 fights and holds flyweight records for submissions and finishes. His throne was crafted with steel and sweat. They are 2 stories forged in fire, 2 warriors who understand that champions aren't born, they're built. On paper, Van is still raw and unfiltered, but the octagon octagon isn't paper. It's built with hours before dawn, in classrooms where English sounded like static, and in gyms that never stop. Pantoja expects chaos, but Van is chaos with a plan. He's the sniper in the storm, and when the cage door shuts, it won't just be a title fight, it'll be a confrontation of histories. Who breaks? Who rises? The one who stayed silent in the storm, or the one at the throne? If Joshua Van conquers, it shatters ceiling glass for every kid displaced and every silent fighter who found purpose. If he loses, it doesn't ruin his story, it adds to it. It's another chapter about never giving up, not about failure. Just another step forward for the underdog. They said he didn't belong. They said he'd crumble. But each cage, every weight cut, every post-fight prayer proves they were wrong. This isn't hype. This is legacy in motion. And if you're not watching Joshua Van yet, you will be. So when the bell rings, who are you rooting for? Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and see you guys in the next one.